Morning, colleagues. Welcome to the fees regulation workshop. We are waiting 5 minutes for all attendees to be present, and then we will begin.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Rafat, can I just test with you? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Seems like we've got a full house. That's good. Welcome, everyone. I see we're sitting at about 446 participants to the meeting. Let's see, we're seeing hands now. Okay, great. So welcome, everyone. I think no sound. Someone says there's no sound.
We can hear you,
Sharon,
Sia. The
Rafat,
sound.
please.
It may be a delayed message, but we can hear you.
Okay, great. All right, so good morning, everyone. Okay, I'm getting confirmation that people are able to hear us. Great stuff. So welcome to the discussion on the fees that we've just, well, not just, but that we published. We received your comments to these fees, and thank you very much for very extensive feedback to us, for very extensive feedback that you've provided us. We certainly do appreciate it. We've gone through all of the comments and we've prepared feedback that our CFO, Mr. Rafat Khos, will take us through. And how we will conduct this meeting, because there's a lot of us here. So I'm going to ask that we allow Rafat to take us through the entire presentation. And then when he's then done, what we will do is go through every section. Because again, it's a big meeting, I'm going to ask that you put your comments on the chat. So we're not going to open it up for people to raise hands, or else we're going to miss so many of you. Simple questions. We've got senior managers for all our functions in the meeting. So simple ones, we'll quickly respond to those. There may be those that we need to verbally speak to those, and Rafat, ourselves as executives and others will then comment. So we will then take questions when we then go back to the presentation. So just allow us then time for Rafat to take you through everything. Again, the reason why we are saying we'll go back to each section is that we can have then a very structured discussion on a specific topic and specific section, and then we move to the next. I see some of you are saying that there's people in the lobby. We've got our team in the background that are addressing all of that, and they will then let everyone in. Okay. I just want to see if there's any technical glitches still. Yeah, okay, looks like people are fine. The minutes, yes, you will receive those. You will receive the minutes. Okay. Yeah, no, colleagues, we're not going to allow you to unmute, or else we're going to have a bit of a havoc. We're sitting at 472. We have 600 people that have RSVP'd for this. So if we run it that way, it's really going to be difficult. So again, we will go back to each slide, each section, and please have your comments ready. You will type those questions for us. So the only people that can unmute is the SAHPRA team. Okay. All right. Rachad, are you ready to present? Santani, we're seeing your screen. Are you the one sharing?
Good morning, Sia. I will bring up the presentation shortly.
Okay. It's a mistake.
Okay, thank you. Rachad, over to you, please.
Yeah. It is a bit slow, the system. I think it might be due to the numbers we have today, but good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fee regulation workshop. This presentation is mainly dealing with comments received and our responses thereto on specific fees that were gazetted for public comment. Again, I'll go through the presentation, and I will then please withhold your comments that you will do in the chat box until we open it up then for discussion. And the intention is to actually then go per section as per this index and take a round of comments per section so that we can deal with this in a orderly manner. I'll just bring up the presentation mode. CEO, can you see my screen?
Sorry, Rachad, yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you. So, like I've indicated, we will do various sections. We have a section because we received quite a lot of broad comments that cuts across most of the fee categories or fee descriptions that we have. So we will deal with that. Then we'll go into priority reviews, different sections in category A, human, D, human. We'll go to clinical trials, fees for licenses, including medical devices and CAMs. We'll go to inspectorates, permits and certificates, amendments, transfers, and appeals. Just in terms of background, just give some time for this to move. In terms of background, we had, before publishing the revised fee gazette for comments, we had various engagements with industry, trying to get a grips to how we can affect changes and deal with some of the other issues we had historically on some of our fees that we charge. But basically by 4th of August 2023, we published our proposed revised fee regulations for public comments, which closed on the 3rd of November 2023. Comments received within a specific time frame were from 21 industry representatives and representative bodies and individuals. So they were quite a comprehensive response received. It took us some time to work through this to get to today, where we can formally respond to those comments. So we did effect some changes based on the comments, and we implemented those, and we'll present those. These include reanalysis of the cost recoveries that we've done initially, and revising those when we looked again at the comments and whether we missed something. We've introduced new fee categories based on those comments as well, and we did remove some of the fees where we received comments on those. So again, this presentation will only address fee categories where comments were received and within the required time frame. The biggest change to the fee regulation that we want to publish or gazette is on the medical device regulation. So we've completely removed the new medical device fees that we published initially for comment. The main reason being that the medical device regulation is not yet finalized, and we've internally seen that the revised planning for call-up of products will probably only commence in 2025. So the new fees for the medical devices is withdrawn, and the fees that are currently applicable to those would only be the licenses. So the future for medical devices is we'll do a separate process, and we will be initiating that pilots to the medical devices, and we can do a proper cost analysis and different fee categories for the different work streams that we have. And we will then follow a similar process to what we've been doing today. So the overall comments and responses, so like I said, the following comments and responses cuts across multiple fee areas. There are quite a lot of comments to indicate, the fees should only be in line with inflation. And our response to that is the majority of our fees were only increased by an average of 4.1%. It should be noted that this is significantly lower than the average inflation rates for 2023. You would have noticed some higher or lower percentage increases, and some of them are due to just rounding up or down of the amounts just to facilitate easier processing of payments and elimination of errors. It should also be noted that SAHPRA didn't have any inflationary adjustments since December 2020. So this is effectively 3 years for us as an entity without receiving any increases on our fees that was published in December 2020. And you can imagine that is probably an average of 5 to 6% per annum. So effectively, we should have done a 15 to 16% increase on all our fees that are currently existing, but we thought to hold off on that basically because of the introduction of some of the new fees. Some fees do also appear high, and I'll flag those as well in the presentation. It's mainly because we've removed the screening fee of about 1,800 and included that in the initial application fee. And that is just to eliminate the administrative burden of making multiple payments and doing multiple checks. So those screening fees have been removed and included in some of the fee categories, so it would appear to be a higher than inflationary increase. There were also comments on the new fee should be in line to inflation. But because it's a new fee category, we had to do new cost recovery calculations. There's nothing to compare it to. And that's why you would think it is a significant increase, but it's basically just a new category, and the cost recovery calculations were done to justify these fees. Certain fees, some of them do have a significant year-on-year increase, but there weren't a lot of them. And it's basically just when we reviewed and did a re-evaluation of the time and effort taken for those related regulatory activities, that the current fee in the 2020 Gazette does not consider all review processes within that work stream. And we needed to make an adjustment to that fee and to enable a justified cost recovery. So on our new revenue lines, previously not charged for and now being implemented, I think the question was why are we introducing new fees? So during the review of the fee regulation, we noted that various work streams, which takes considerable time and effort, does not have a fee associated with that regulatory activity. So in line with our cost recovery model, it is justifiable for us to charge for these fees and for these activities. There were quite a lot of comments and questions on timelines should be included in the regulation and agreed up front. There were calls for discounts and credits to be provided if timelines are not met. SAHPRA would like to remind industry that we are a regulator. We are not a service provider. We operate within a legal framework that the legal framework provided, and we cannot accelerate processes due to industry pressure that might compromise our regulatory processes. SAHPRA has significant funding challenges, and we are not operating at 100% capacity, and this has been well communicated to industry as well. In terms of our timelines, however, we do communicate our regulatory timelines and its performance against this in our annual performance plan and the outcome of these in the annual report. So we do have comprehensive high-level strategic timelines that are communicated through that mechanism, but also remember that the requirements and regulations do change, our capacity to change, and these targets are reviewed annually to indicate where we are and what we can do with our current capacity. The requests for across the board for low fees for SMMEs and for local manufacturing. So SAHPRA is considering a mechanism for SMMEs and local manufacturers on a strategic level. So we're having those discussions and we will communicate the outcome of plans with regards to that in the near future. Continuing with overall comments and responses, there was calls, quite a few, in terms of milestone payments instead of upfront payments at application stage, meaning that payments should only be expected on the completion of a certain activity or phase during the evaluation process. So we've considered this and we had internal meetings quite extensive in terms of whether we can introduce this or pilot this at least. But SAHPRA currently doesn't have the systems to enable us to do such a process. It will be very frustrating for industry and for SAHPRA to apply such mechanism at this point in time. So milestone payments cannot be applied until our regulatory process is fully digitized and integrated with the financial system. Upfront payments being applied is also, when we looked at other regulators, the same model followed by them. Milestone payments may be considered after the digitization strategy has been implemented. However, we need to also assess what is the impact on our timelines due to the administrating partial payments and certain steps being completed in the process. Another cross-cutting questions or comments were reliance fee. This is the full review fee to be included. So our basic response to that type of comment is that the majority of fees impacted by reliance is inflationary based at the moment. Reliance also already benefits the applicant in terms of reduced timelines. The processes followed are the same. Verification of sameness and access of reports sourced by SAHPRA are time-consuming and resource-intensive. And even when what we've noticed is failure to have that reliance being implemented would result in a default to a full review being performed on those applications. Comments on guidelines not updated or finalized. Guidelines are living documents and would be updated as required to align with regulatory best practice. However, there's always existing guidelines in place, whilst a review of these guidelines are also undertaken. Following existing guidelines, so please follow existing guidelines until implementation date or communication thereto is shared. Any concerns with regards to our guidelines or guidelines being updated should be communicated through the appropriate channels. There was also a suggestion of mirroring EMA in terms of allowing for certain valid criteria for fee determination, considering application status, product type, and product status. So it's important to note that SAHPRA is a small regulatory agency compared to EMA. Such requests may be entertained once SAHPRA processes are established and part of a wider AMA, which will have a centralized approach. Further matters of advanced therapy requires mandate for SAHPRA and corresponding expertise to avail services, which are costly and cannot be carried by us as a small regulator. It will be investigated to mirror approaches of EMA and what they have adopted, such as limiting the number of applications submitted per cycle to enable us to better manage the applications in terms of the resources ratio. We did get quite a lot of comments on our response fee. So we want to make it clear that all application fees initially paid will include the cost of a first round of response. The fee will only apply for the second round of response for the different categories in the revised gazette. So that's the first section in terms of our overall comments. The next section we will deal with is priority reviews. So these are all new applications, and just want to indicate the format of our presentation. So the description part is basically the fee, the description, how it will look like in the Gazette. I know it needs a bit more work and cleanup in terms of references to paragraphs and so forth, but we will do this so you don't have to respond on that. We'll do our checks to make sure everything is aligned and referenced correctly. Then the blue line is what is the current fee. And you'll see this one, for example, is blank because it's a new fee. The purple highlighted column is basically what we published for comment, and then the revised fee, if any, would then be the light green bar. So you see there's no change here. So in terms of response I've just summarized on the next table the responses we received in terms of this type of fee, and then I'll go through our specific responses to this. So the priority review policy applies to new chemical entities, new biological medicines, interchangeable multi-source or generic medicines, and biosimilars for both new registrations, but only for type 2 variation applications. The communication on the request for priority review is available on the SAHPRA website and clearly describes the criteria and processes to be followed, so there is guidance available. But at the moment, there is no clear or updated guideline at the moment, but the communication serves this purpose. Please note that the cost of processing the request for a priority review is the same irrespective of the outcome or type of application. The administration fee will be charged for the initial request of priority review of an application, new or variation. The administrative fee, we've made a change, will not be waived if the approval is successful. The administrative fee is based on our current priority review request policy and processes. So we do have certain steps internally that needs to be followed to actually make a determination if this is a priority review or meets the criteria, and it does take some considerable time and effort for this. The next is the generics priority review. So first, you note I've highlighted the items in red, and this is mainly to make sure that it aligns to our normal process description of generics and new medicines and biosimilars and so forth. So we'll use this description, and it's also been updated to make clear what would be contained in this type of application. So for example, and I'm not going to repeat all of them, but in this example, this application will include 2 APIs and 1 BE study. And additional APIs and BE studies will be charged for in line with the fee that I will go through a little bit later. What you'll also note is a significant decrease in terms of what we've published initially, and also new categories which are listed to related to the 2 items below the first description of the fee. And that's mainly to address some of the comments where that was requested. But overall, what we've noted when we reviewed the cost is that when we reperformed the cost calculation, is that there were actually multiple duplication of BE studies that were included in the initial cost, and we removed those and adjusted the fees accordingly. In the case of other cost of breakdown of the added resources, closer timelines, and adding additional meeting frequency, costs were also factored into our priority review pricing. So basically what you'll see is that there's a 60% increase on a normal application fee if it passes through a priority review process. On the next line item, we've introduced this new category for generic products, and it's to align, like I said, to the descriptions for normal or non-priority applications. And this is a generic application without bioavailability, and that's about 53% increase compared to a normal application process. Then we've introduced a category for all generic products with clinical data. The new fee introduces to address priority generics with clinical data. It is significantly higher than the normal fee that we've charged, but I'll address that when we get to that specific fee category. So during the re-evaluation, it was noted that the current fee is not covering the costs fully when we look at the normal review pathway. Then priority reviews, new chemical entities. Our response there, we didn't change the amount there. is the evaluation is based on the current cost of review. It must be noted that in case of an NCE, no BE studies is included as it is an innovator and is dependent on a clinical study review. This priority review is 38% higher than the normal application process. The generic fee reviewed is therefore also lower than the NC application. So there was quite a bit of feedback on why is generic so much higher than our NCEs, and we've basically addressed that with the new fee categories and the reduction of the fee that we've initially indicated. Biologicals, we re-examined the cost calculation, and this is a slight decrease from the previous or the initially gazetted fee for comment, and that's about 53% higher than a normal application. Not all biological applications are considered priority, as a separate normal application fee can also be charged for. Biological studies do not include BE reviews. Then we've removed the fee category priority quality type 2 minor amendment. So the classifications for minor and major is included in the applicable guideline. The fee will be removed as type 2 amendments are considered major amendments as per the fee of 23,000 Rand below. The cost includes, again, like I said, one response review. I will not repeat that as that has been addressed. Then we have the priority quality type 2 amendment. There is a type 2. It is a type 2 that involves widening change in specifications as opposed to more extensive API source change involving full review of API MF. So also you can refer to our guidelines and explanatory notes regarding this fee type. Then we move on to post-registration. So we did correct the wording to safety. So thanks for that comment. So all the applications, like I said, included the first response. There is, however, consideration of quality, clinical, spectral variations only for type 2 on priority. So we do deem type 1 as a too short of turnaround time for a priority review consideration. So that it addresses the two fees, number 1 and 2 listed under D. Priority clinical, we removed that was a response review, so removed it from priority and just actually included it under response reviews in under category A medicines. What I'll show when we get there as well is that we did actually include then a split between major and minor as well. Please note extra clinical data will require additional expert evaluation. We had a fee that we wanted to introduce for a request for the application number. This has been removed. Then we have a fee, also a new fee for request for borderline product status review. So the fee will cover all borderline products. The processing of the request is the same, irrespective of the outcome, whether it will be classified as a medical device, medicine, or other. So internally, we really need to sit and consider what is this. Some of them are quite complex as well. So borderline, we established a borderline committee with a primary and a peer review involved, the administration and screening of such applications as well. So some applications require significant deliberation due to the impact that the classification will have. That was priority reviews. Then we move into category A medicine, new applications. So in the comments, we noted that there was a bit of a concern that this is a significant increase. So I'm just showing that this is actually just inflationary. I think there was a mistake with this fee, the 217 and the 85 was compared to a fee that we actually removed from the Gazette going forward. So it was compared to 111,000, which is not correct. It should be compared to the 208,400, which was previously charged for. So this fee is based on cost of review, and like I've indicated, it's only 4.2% increase on that one. Similar to the strength and dosage under number 8.2, the current fee is 82,000. I think it was compared to the 44,000 that we subsequently removed, and the same principle applies. The cost of review is per study, and time of review is higher. Cost of review fees also have increased since 2020. That needs to be considered as well when we have re-evaluated our fee cost recoveries. Then on biologicals and the strength and dosages related to that, there was a comment on timelines. So I did overall respond to timelines and where we can find that. But please remember, this is not a generic application, so it will fall under the NC timelines and categories and timelines. When we look at category A, new medicine generic, also again, this is basically just an inflationary increase. The generic products, there was a question which generic products it relates to. So it's described in the fee description, and that is quite clear. The price is only 4.3%, and this one includes 2 APIs and no BE. So the next line item includes a BE study, and that's the difference basically between the number 6 and number 7 that's listed there. But please also note that additional APIs will be charged for, and we'll get there for items 6 and 7, additional APIs and BEs as well. There was a comment on updating paragraphs. Like I said, we will do comprehensive reviews because we've removed fees that change, and we'll make sure that those do align. Then this is the original fee, the normal review pathway fee for all generic products with clinical data at 87,600. In response to the comments, there is BE evaluations take more time and effort to review. The current fee, as we've reviewed it and we saw that this fee is actually not recovering our cost, the 87,600. It's to some extent basically subsidized, but we will have to review this in the next fee regulation update. So basically what we've noticed is there's not a lot of these type of application, and most of the information being literature in nature and not actual studies. Number 10 there, we've updated the paragraph and we'll show alignment. Then we go to response review. So what we intend to do is to make it clear in the description of the fee. You can see they're highlighted in red, will be for a second response. And that cuts across all the response types and charges that we will do. So our response to some of the comments on the new chemical entity responses is the first response round is included in the initial application cost. However, the second and subsequent response round must be paid for. It is expected that applicants submit applications conforming with guideline requirements to avoid a large number of queries, and where this first query round is not adequately addressed, results in more response rounds required, which have an added cost of review for us. This will encourage, the fee will encourage applicants to ensure that their submissions and responses are addressed adequately to avoid many response rounds. Guidelines will be developed for classification of responses and response queries and response query and timelines. Content available in the guidelines, ICH and IRPP, can also be utilized. Based on our discussions as well, training and workshops on our guidelines and process will be undertaken in the near future, and queries cannot be raised outside guideline requirements, and such instances should be reported through the correct channels. The capping on this fee is not applicable. On clinical, so like I've indicated, it was there. I just removed it from priority to a normal response review. The extra clinical data that we will receive will require additional expert evaluation. In terms of our evaluation outcomes of safety and efficacy, the response there is the rationale is about the cost recovery. If the applicant has met the criteria of submission, new and variation, there will not be queries raised. Note that the evaluation process is to establish quality, safety, and efficacy, and hence the applications must meet this criteria. And it's not about finding something to raise a query. Industry is aware that both industry and regulators have collectively established ICH guidelines, and these criteria for QSE is met. Note that the applicants take time to respond and always request extensions and advice, and it's really stressing our limited resources to address these queries. The added resources for additional responses has not been accounted for in the initial fee. The fee is to ensure funding for our resources and that the timelines can be met. Note that the revenue is not recognized until the review is done, The matter of having to have the same review for multiple submissions have been addressed with industry when industry agreed to have groupings of amendments and not to have a range. Then you'll also see we have removed type 1B and type 1A fees for responses. And the main point there is that what we will see is probably that it will be part of a multiple submission response. When we will charge it as a type 2 response. So we've included the wording here, second response review of type 2 and multiple submissions of type 1A and B. On responses and consultations, clinical evaluations. So the approach followed by our clinical team would be that this type of response would refer to new data in response to an evaluation query. The fee is only applicable if data was not submitted in the original application. We've also introduced a split fee, and the fee, we moved that fee, that's 7,200, to the specific response review section in the regulations. On consultation meetings, there was a request on cost breakdowns and why the meetings isn't that long. So what we've done is to address that some meetings might be quicker or longer than others. You can see we have the type A, B, and C meetings to split that up to make sure that we adequately address the different technicalities of these type of meetings. But for the higher example, the type A that we have the cost of 6 external experts, which takes about 5 hours in terms of preparation and about 3 hours in terms of the actual meeting for that type of meeting. And that rate is 900 Rand per hour. So the rate of 900 is DPSA aligned. That is what is prescribed. The review of information is shared and the time taken for such review. Hence, we have the sub-classifications like I've indicated for the different type of meetings. There is quite a lot of administrative costs associated with arranging, minuting, and reporting of the outcome of these type of meetings. And it is, in the end, quite beneficial for industry. So the new fee category we've introduced is for additional APIs and BEs. So please note, and I've highlighted in red, the fees for additional API sources and FDCs is excluding CEPs and CPQs and additional BE studies. So I think there was also a comment, I think the original description indicated just new medicines, but this will apply to new generics and NCE applications. So the cost recovery on initial application, like I've indicated, will include 2 APIs. In order to meet the service timelines, there should be payment commensurate to the resources and services used for review of additional APIs submitted. We did consider, in fact, in reduced time cost for the additional API cost recovery, so there's no additional admin or other costs applicable to it, but purely the review time and rates charged for that review. The charge will be per application number as previously consulted with industry and only applicable to new applications. Then we also have a category for BE studies, and it's a bit higher than an API and a similar response as indicated above. So when we go to post-registration, so you will see most of these fees are basically the 4%, 4.1 to 3% increases, and which is not that substantial. However, we did get some comments on those, and the responses to that would be for this fee of 2,100, we'll align the paragraphs and make sure that it's corrected. But if there's no clinical data, then it's not a type 2. The charge will be as per dossier. A fee for clones and duplicates will be separately charged for, and this fee relates to certificate variations. Number 2 below, the response there on the including clinical package insert is no, it's not possible. Names and scheduling evaluation first, and then also it goes to clinical evaluations. Evaluations are also considered by various expert committees that we have to assist with the outcome of that evaluation. Number 3, just below that, sort of similar in terms of the process for range and scheduling and then clinical evaluations. Evaluations is also considered by various of our expert committees. And the 3,300 referred to under line 5 is only applicable to type 1 evaluations. The fee for clones and duplicates will be separately charged for. Number 4, response to that is reviewer fees. And that's one of the items where we actually had a more than inflationary increase from 15,600 to 32,800. So that is one of the areas where we noted considerable under recovery. Not sure why the previous fee didn't include that, but also to note the reviewer fees are not the same as probably 4 or 5 years ago when the cost calculations were done for that type of fee. And the previous fee did not adequately consider total time and effort. So I think what was missing there is basically the 21 hours that a level 3 primary review takes, 7 hours for peer review, and 8 hours for adjudication at our expert committee rates. Number 5, so in terms of it, it's not the same as per the comment there. Type 1A and Type 1B application is based on alignment with P&A and EMA fees. However, clinical variations are charged per application and not per variation. And it also refers to Type A. Continuing with post-registration, you'll see that fee of 6,000 Rand that we want to reduce has been removed. The clinical responses have been moved and not specifically removed, but remember it has the different categories as well. In terms of our quality variations, I think the comment was there on grouping. So the groupings with industry was consulted on and will remain. On the next one, number 7 there, duplicate wording will be removed. In terms of our retentions and renewal fees, our response on retention is that I think there was a question or comment on waiving it in the year of renewal. So management has explored the possibility, we piloted it to some extent. However, the Medicines Act does not allow non-payment during the year of renewal. Fees are due because of a listing obtained after registration. And please remember, retention fees and annual license fees funds are various regulatory compliance activities that does not attract a fee, for example, our investigations of border control and pharmacovigilance. Then the new fee, it's been workshopped on quite a lot with industry, is the renewal fees. So we had a relook at our costing for renewal fees. We, as you know, we've piloted, we had some time to gather in more data relating to our cost recovery mechanisms, and we saw that it is possible to reduce those fees. So it reduced from 50,000 to 34,000 for a master application in terms of a new chemical entity, and line extensions from 20,000 to 13,500. But please note that the line extensions, and we've updated the wording there to make it clear, is up to a maximum of 2 lines. So essentially we'll be capping it. We'll only pay for 1 master and 2 line extensions, regardless of the number of line extensions. Similarly to the generic application reduced fee and capping of those line extensions. Authorized prescribers. This is also a new fee that we've introduced. The review of authorized prescribers and authorized use prescribing of scheduled substances applications. So the names and scheduling unit and the committee overseeing that or assisting that unit reviews this type of application, which is quite costly. We have 7 to 8 members on different levels of committees that we have, and they take about 2 to 1 hours to review those type of applications. So these applications submitted by general associations, HPCSA, SAPC, and so forth, and it is then referred to the clinical committee and for comments and reviews before referral again to the RC committee for finalization and approval. The next one is our testing our lot release fees in terms of the batch releases that we do. So here we are introducing, and you can see we removed the fee after 12 months. What we internally decided is to have a look at a 12-month period of charging the 70,000 Rand for lot release and 35,000 Rand for the re-release. So the questions of, this is high and excessive, it's not actually the case. Currently, we are paying a lot for our costs for the NCL laboratory. And you can refer also to the 22-23 SAHPRA annual report, and you'll see there on page 130, it cost us 22.6 million Rand to have that laboratory specifically dedicated to addressing our lot releases. And the revenue that we generate from that is only 3.9 million. That would be on the page 170 biological medicines in the annual report. So you can see there is quite a huge gap between funding and fully recovering the costs of the laboratory. And I think it was inherited from the MCC days, but SAHPRA does not receive any financial assistance or additional funding for operating the laboratory. So looking forward, the cost of the NCL, the National Control Laboratory for 24-25 is estimated to be 26 million Rand. So when we look at the past 5 years, annual volumes for lot release, 173 in terms of full releases and 35 re-releases, we will only generate an amount of 10.9. So I'm just showing the logic why we wanted to jump in terms of our fees from year 1 to year 2, so that would enable us on full recovery. But like I said, we will abandon the fee after 12 months. We'll reassess and see if there could be a more protracted phase out of increases so that we actually can meet the full or recover the full costs for the National Control Laboratory. So we do estimate that we will still under recover 50%. Remember, all of these items that we do not charge for revenue or significantly undercharged for is hampering us to actually be fully capacitated as a regulator so that we can meet industry demands. There was a comment on PIT, so no further reduction in fees can be afforded, but remember, lot releases is not the same as PIT by the applicants. Then same with re-release, very similar response. Just note, re-release is not PIT. Testing is per lot and not per product. And we move to category D, human. In terms of these increases, you'll see it's only inflation, but this is the category that includes the 1,800 screening fee that we've initially had separately. So we're removing that completely from the Gazette, and we will charge one fee. So if you add 14.3 plus the 1.8 plus 4%, you'll get to basically the fee to be charged. And that's similar for number 4 under A. Then the other one relates to medicine registration, which has been approved. That's number B, one below. The registrations are not the same as licenses. This is also only an inflationary adjustment. On clinical trials, we had a comment, does this include RUOs? So we're just clarifying it's only section 21. Then for fees for licenses, that is the category we had before. We did sort of indicate and clarify that these type of fees would include medical devices and CAMs. So we added some wording, and we added actually section B just to split normal applications or medicine applications and CAMs from medical devices, just to make that more clear. And should there be different increases or a reassessment of the fees later on, that can split those two. So that's not a duplication. It's just a different category. We will not charge you for A and for B. So all of these increases are also only inflationary adjustments compared to 2020. Our detailed response regarding to section A1 to 5 or 1 to 3 is basically the licensing guidelines provide clarity as to what applicants are applying for in terms of the different categories for medicines and scheduled substances, which include elements of different activities applied for. to minimize multiple licenses. These are based on cost recovery and reductions will not be affordable. However, local companies are already paying less fees than importing or exporting companies, which will incur additional costs, including an inspection fee. Fees are charged based on the activity and applied consistently. Regulation 9B does not apply to medicines and scheduled substances. And also note we've removed the wording referring to HCR under the distributor license. Then for number 4 and 5, specific comment there, trying to address some of the local manufacturing concerns, is that local manufacturing does not attract import and export fees and will only pay the 26,200. HRCs for local manufacturing will only pay 15,600 for import and 15,600 for export. On the medical device section, this is new and separate description, not a duplication for medical devices and IVDs. You can refer to the Medical Device Regulations and the Medicines and Related Substances Act on establishment related to medical devices, including IVDs. The definition of manufacturer, distributor, and wholesaler is indicated under the Medical Device Regulation published version 2016. When we continue for fees for licenses, the renewal section as well, I'll respond there, the retention fee will be applicable in the year of renewal or the annual license fee, very similar to what we're doing with our products, as the Medicines Act does not allow for an exemption on renewal. The licenses unit does not charge for amendments during renewal. HRC wording also removed for distributor. And in medical devices, again, not a duplication, categories for renewals. The document have to be reviewed during the renewal process. Annual fee and retention fees are not the same, and allocation of funds does not serve the same purpose. During this process of application screening, review of evaluation, a similar process is followed. Fee reduction for SME does not cover the fact that similar processes is followed for evaluation of the product, whether it's submitted by a SME or not. Continuing with the annual retention of license, there was a comment on the due date. So as we've done before, so yes, the fees are due from 30 June each year. So SAHPRA does allow a 30-day payment period based on the communication that we send out each year regarding this. The retention fee will be applicable in the year of renewal, as the Medicine Act does not allow the exemption of renewal. Licensing unit does not charge for the amendment during the renewal. The fee increase is based on inflation only as well. Funds, pharmacovigilance and regulatory inspections, law enforcement activities, and it's not the same activities as compared to other SADC countries. As per the guideline, products and licenses listed as at 31 December of the preceding year will have fees due by June the following year. Licensing of any manufacturer, number F there. The second one is basically the two activities are not comparable as indicated and not done at the same level by the same person or resource. Licensing and registrations are two separate activities. Then we have a fee in terms of application for the amendment. Our response there is, I think the comment was, can we have different categories in terms of the number of amendments? So the amount is less than for applying for a new license, which would be applicable for most of these type of applications. However, this fee was introduced to ensure that trade continues and does not disrupt the applicant's operations. Please note that this fee is not new and it's only inflationary increase. The work involved of the fee remains the same regardless of the number of amendments due to regulatory oversight requirements. The significance of the amendment does not affect technical and administrative part of licensing. Amendments that will attract a fee are listed in the licensing guideline for amendments. When we move to inspectorate, we will remove the references made to medical devices. And also there was a comment on the 2,200 Rand. It's not per hour, it's per day. So it's not like the 1,660 per hour, and it is substantially less for a desktop inspection. Permits and certificates. Our general response there is comments refer to the licenses. And this section refers to permits and certificates, which are different to licenses. You can refer to the inspectorate and regulatory compliance guidelines that will assist there. We have removed the fee for port health and border detainment products. In terms of our amendments, transfers, and appeals, our comment there is that it is correct. We will not charge if there's an error due to SAHPRA. In terms of the 1,100, is it the same as paragraph A14? This fee is applicable only to TOA of medicines. Paragraph 8A14 refers to a fee applicable to a proprietary name change or site change on TOA for medical devices. Then there was quite a few comments on the fee payable for our appeals. The appeals process is quite costly for SAHPRA as well. We would like to give an indication of such, and it's still, the fee does not cover the cost of our cost to address this specific appeal. For example, as you all know, lawyers do have quite an expensive hourly rate. So if we source an external service provider to assist, it will cost us 2,500. Otherwise, we do appoint a legal committee with legal committee representatives, and they do also charge the 900 Rand per hour for those representatives. Could be up to 2 to 3 of them, and I think if it's that, the 900 basically covers only 58 hours to deal with a specific matter, sometimes divided by 2 or 3 specific committee members. And that is our responses, and that brings us to the end of the presentation. I will go to the specific categories, and we can then open it up for comments.
Thank you very much, Rahad. I see there's been some questions that Portia and the team on the side have been addressing, but let's go back to the specific sections. I'm just looking at this. It's saying no questions yet. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at something else. Sorry. And was looking at Q&A, not the chat. Okay. So let's go. Which section are you going to go to, Rahad, so we can take questions around that?
Yeah. So I'm thinking let's maybe start with the overall comments responses. If there is very specific questions regarding that, which would be the section here. So we can just
we're seeing the index slide. Oh, here we go. All right. So the overall, let me just read some of the comments on the overall. That's for priority. Portia, if you can also help me with some of the overall ones. So there's a comment here. It says, I wanted to confirm that these updated fees are not applicable for category C and category D veterinary medicines.
Okay, I can respond to that. So we did publish new fees for veterinary. We have received no responses on the category C and D for veterinary. So no comments, not responses. So again, as indicated, our presentation deals with all the public comments received at closing time or closure date.
Okay. Thank you. So we didn't receive comments there, but they were published. Let's take the next one. Borderline. It says for the implementation of borderline product status review, can this not wait until the guideline is finalized, as we think will remove these uncertainties and avoid clogging the system that is already undercapacitated. We've been waiting for this guideline for long, and this also has And this also impact on safety issues, which those products are in the market and advertised as safe. Portia, maybe do you want to reflect on that?
Yes, Chair. Yeah, the status of this guideline is at a very advanced stage. It's with the legal committee, so it should be finalized very soon. And the guideline, as the name guideline says, is just to guide with regards to the applications for borderline products. So we cannot wait until the borderline, the guideline is finalized before we implement the fees. Thank you, Chair.
If you need a follow-up on that one, please. The question was from CT Connie. So you can maybe pose a follow-up question if you do have. Peter Kraft. Yes, we will continue to have those discussions, as we said, under the Captains of Industry meeting, and also as the CAMS working group, as we've discussed. So as per the actions of last week, so we will continue with those discussions. And then there's a comment here that says, please clarify definition for line extensions. Do you refer to duplicates and replicates, or to actual line extensions such as fictive, simplistic example, i.e. OTC, cream A purple? Portia or Rehat, who's going to take that one?
We'll give it to Silva's, Chair.
Thank you, CRO. So in response to that, with line extensions, these would involve, for instance, different strengths. So you may have a 5 milligram, a 10 milligram, a 15 milligram, and you may also have different dosage forms. So those are line extensions. With duplicates, these are the ones that are submitted at the same time of registration, and it's exactly the same dossier. And a replica is one which may be submitted by a different applicant, but it's exactly the same dossier of another applicant who is given permission to utilize their dossier. So that's the differences between, line extensions, duplicates, and replicas. Thanks.
Thanks, Savarani. Portia, just to follow up on the guideline. The follow-up question from Connie is, do we have some date indication for the guideline when we plan to publish it?
The Chair, we're looking at mid-March, following the legal committee discussions. As soon as they've discussed the document, we should be able to publish. Thank you, Chair.
Colleagues, if you can wait on the comments for the sections that we're going to come to, because then we're going to miss them. I see there's comments on lot release, etc. We'll come to those slides. So let's try to have a bit of structure, please. So these are just general ones, and I'm going to pause shortly, Rehat. On the MD regulations, I think we've already mentioned that those fees, we're pausing them until we finalize the regulations. It says there's a question from K. Go ahead, please.
Just also to clarify on the MD. So we did introduce completely new fees that has been removed, but the current fees that we charge for licensing and annual and renewals will remain.
Absolutely. This is for products that we've paused. Absolutely. Okay. And then from Krishna, what is the cost of regulatory filing of transferring an already approved NDA from one plant to another? Is that for a transfer of applicancy? I'm not quite clear. Or is it a variation? I'm not clear on the question. Can anyone assist, or should Krishna clarify?
Yes, Chair. Dion asked for Krishna to clarify.
Okay, Krishna, if you can clarify them. And then Kristen, you just scroll down on your question, the longish one. When SAHPRA considers registration cost for MD IVDs, will an impact analysis be done regarding the industry and all of? We spoke to this at the Captains of Industry meeting. We said we are having internal discussions on this. We will then come back to the industry regarding the impact analysis. Okay, so it will come back through the medical devices and IVDs working group. And then there's a question here for the lot release with NCL. With this fee increase, can you expect to see a reduction in the lead times of the end-to-end process? Silverani, I think we've been meeting our time so far, but
Thanks.
Silverani, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, I think in terms of lead times, these are all dependent on the tests that are being performed. Some may require incubation periods that may extend up to 42 days. So we cannot reduce the actual testing time, and hence we've indicated that we would achieve about 95% within those 50 working days. And so I don't think there would be a significant reduction given that the test times itself is taking longer. So we have already optimized on that. There is a process for priority, but that obviously would have to meet the priority criteria. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I'm losing my smart here. Let me just see. Apologies, I'm just navigating through these comments. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that was Dion asking for clarity. From Mohammed, generic application fees are nowhere near inflation. Even with no increase since 2022, the fee increase is about 43%. If you take the inflation for 3 years, it doesn't come to that number. Bearing in mind that the increase in 2020 from 2029 was about 182%. Rahat?
Okay, so we have two generic application fees. The one is priority, which is new, and the other one was previously charged for, and I'll just skip to that to explain. I tried to address it in my presentation. So what I've seen is that we previously charged 111,000 Rand for a different type of description for that generic fee. What Mohammed is doing, we've always charged 208,400 for this generic fee description, right? It's only inflationary increase to 217. So we removed the fee of 111,000 and we removed the strengthened dosage fee of 44,000. I think that's what he's referring to. I would like maybe Silverani just to address why we removed the 111 and the 44,000 for these, so not generic, this is chemical entities, sorry. I've sort of missed the boat there. So in terms of our generic fees, those are only inflation. And then we have one that includes a bio study. So it's basically this one plus a bio study. So it's not necessarily an 84, you can't compare these two fees, the 84,000 or the 87,600 to the 120. So the 84 is the one we've already charged in terms of just two APIs. It was just the inflationary increase. And then we're introducing a new fee that includes these studies, which would cost it at 120,000. So it's a new fee category. We can't compare that to our other fees. So if you read that question, does my response help?
Which one?
Richard, thanks. I think you have addressed the issue in that we have calculated the actual cost involved, and the fee that we are talking to is basically the inflationary fee. That 44,000, if you could just go back up there, it's basically for talking to a possible line extension, which would be then that amount of money, the fees. So it was actually 82,000, and then if you add the inflation, I think it comes to the 85,000. So that's correct as you have interpreted it, and the same thing with the fees in respect of the NCEs. So what you're referring to in this slide on the generics, you have a generic that does not have a bio study, which will then be the 84,000. And then of course with inflation, you got 87,600. In the case where the generic includes a bio study, that's the 120,000. So just to highlight that the review of bio studies 60 hours, and just to outline that when we were at the US FDA, they indicated their BE study reviews is between 80 and 100 hours, and also the WHO is 80 hours. So we have costed hours at 60 hours. So that's just to advise you of the costing of these additional hours involved in the bio study review. So that's the actual cost of those evaluations. I'm not sure if they require further clarity with this. And the priority, the priority is obviously priority. So it involves additional cost of committee meetings and, accommodating the administrative processes of reducing the time for review. Thanks.
Both of you. And then let's go to Rudy's question. NCE applications often include BE studies. However, these BE studies serve as supporting studies during the product development rather than the main source of safety and efficacy data, which are derived from clinical trials. BE studies are not typically reviewed in NCE applications in the same manner as for generic applications. Are these BE studies applicable in terms of fees? I think we just need to clarify that. Silverani, do you want to talk to that? Because it mainly applies to generics.
Thanks. Yes. So we normally do assessment of BE studies for generic applications. In the case of an NCE, they do provide the actual clinical studies, and that's the data that is normally reviewed. Some of them provide the BE studies as supportive, but basically as a waiver for added strengths and so on in the NCE, and in which case that's included in the NCE price. So it's not that a separate bio study will be charged for an NCE. It will only be charged in the case of generic medicines. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, Viva. In the case of Zazibona and WHO pre-qualified generic products, especially Zazibona, where SAHPRA is involved in the review process, should the fee not be reduced with the new Zazibona process? Which fee are you referring to? Unless if someone understands the question clearly, or should Viva just clarify? If you can clarify, Viva, you say, should the fee not be reduced with the new Zazibona process? So we're aware of the, obviously involved in the new Zazibona process, but maybe just be specific which fee you're referring to. Then we'll go to, I need to pause at some point and ask that we take the specific section. So I'm going to take, say, the next 4 questions, then I'll hand over to us to focus on a specific section. We'll come back to some of these. Wardina says, kindly clarify the priority fee. The priority review assessment fees is the 11,500 applicable for all priority applications, irrespective of whether the application is declined or approved. I thought this was clear, but Rahat, do you want to further clarify?
Yes, so we initially thought to waive the fee. As per the presentation and highlighted on screen, the administrative fee will not be waived if the approval is successful or declined. So you would pay that because we do incur administrative costs and time to assess such applications.
Great. And then Krishna provided clarity. They were referring to a fee for changing the manufacturing site. So it's variation, I suppose. Silverani, do you want to talk to that? I can read the prior comment from Krishna for you.
Chair, it's Dion. It's Dion who has responded.
Oh, yes, manufacturing site. Yes, go ahead, Dion.
Thank you, Dr. Tumi. Good morning, everybody. So, yes, I've answered Krishna. in the chat. The inspectorate fee for evaluating the site is 850 per product in the proposed gazette. However, there's also a quality component where that is reviewed separately with a separate fee. So if Silverani could just talk to that part. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Dion. So with the variations that's associated with the site change, it could be that there's equipment change, process change, and these would have to be reviewed by quality. And normally these are submitted in terms of their classification. So it could be a type 1B or even a type 2, depending on the extent of the changes. And these would have to be reviewed by quality before inspectorate does the final review. So there's two processes of variations from the quality unit and the inspectorate unit. Thanks.
So I'm going to then go to the last two. Apologies, I'm just scrolling through these. A few are responded to by Portia and Santhony, so I want to touch on that. Okay, so the last two, with regard to amendment of information in the register, that quality as a type 1 variation, whereby no registration certificate will be issued, then does the gazetted proposed 850 not apply, and only the variation fee for newly proposed 3,500. Clarity is required in particular to a code variation in the EU variation guide.
Okay,
I'm not sure who's going to talk to that.
I'll take it, Chair. So in terms of the 3,300, those amendment classifications are quality variations, and it's indicated in the quality fees guidance on how these are costed. And so it doesn't, the 3,300 is not inclusive of the 850. The 850 is a separate fee that is then payable to the inspectorate for amending or updating the register. Thanks.
Thank you. Right, where am I? The next one. Will you share the Auditor General's annual report on an annual basis? As fee payers, as citizens, we're entitled to know whether the funds are being appropriately managed as the Constitution requires. So yeah, so we share our annual report publicly every year. So you're more than welcome to access that, yeah? And then the last one, Rekhad, please advise regarding the quantum of the license allocation fee based on SAHPRA's directly related costs.
So yeah, in the annual reports as well, page 170, you'll see, I think there's different categories. Certificates is about 781,000, and license fee is about 2.6 million rand. But various units do also work on not just the license, so it's cross-functional. So we don't have a specific cost recovery on the license collection fees calculated for that. But it's basically cross-functional. Some of those employees do work on the collections in terms of the registrations, but also do evaluations in terms of the applications received.
Great. And then I'm going to take the last one then, which was the clarity on the Zazibona. So the clarity is that Zazibona has a fee cover in the first 9 months of review. What will SAHPRA's fee be on filing after Zazibona approval? For example, name and clinical PR review. There seems to be a gap, and any additional fees will need to be clarified.
Chair, may I
Go ahead,
this?
please.
Okay, so with Zazibona, the pathway that we follow is basically a reduced review pathway. The benefit to the applicant of having these Zazibona process is that the timeline is much reduced, but there won't be a change in the fee that is currently charged. So if it's a generic application with a bio study, it would be the same fee. that would be charged. I think with the Zazibona process currently, there is a pilot being undertaken, and following that, we would be able to revisit. But as it stands, the benefits that the applicant get is the reduced timeline for the review. Thanks.
And Savani, do you want to touch, I don't know if it'll be you, on the current process that Zazibona is running? Will it still work the same way? Maybe just provide that clarity.
So the process that's being undertaken is a pilot, and we're obviously going to look at any efficiencies that are included into that pathway. But as we anticipate, each of the agencies will continue to if a submission is made to that agency, it will continue to request the fee as per the agency's standard fees. And the Zazibona process would also then require for a fee to be paid for Zazibona process to be maintained. So in terms of fees, that's where we're standing at the moment. But the pathway that will be followed would involve more extensive internal amongst agencies review, and there is intention for even further reduced timelines. So I think it's basically all that can be said at the moment. Thanks.
Savani, and that approach similarly applies to the AMA pilot process. This again, it's a pilot. There's still this continental review, so there's still quite a lot we must learn and determine from the pilot. So those entities that have indicated an expression, an interest to participate in the continental review process, we'll continue to give you updates on that.
Yeah, as the pilot continues, we will be able to share progressively. Thanks.
Okay, Rahad, where are you taking us now? Thanks to the colleagues that are busy responding in the background, Santhani, Posha, and others. So
we've not.
Which section do you want us to tackle now?
I see. Let's start with the for priority review.
So I lost connection. Rahad, do you want to start again? I don't know what happened.
Yeah, probably at the office. So I think we can just maybe go through the priority reviews, open it up for specific comments. I see there is one. Not sure if it's I think the others were responded as well. So there's one that says for priority review application general query is SAHPRA currently not issuing priority review numbers until the fees are published. Many priority review applications were requested for ARV-TB applications, but no feedback from the regulator yet. I think we can pause on priority reviews.
Chair, that was answered by Santhani.
Okay. Anything else on priority review? I see, I don't know if this is, so must priority review fees first be gazetted or is it implementable now? I don't understand that question. Rahad?
So I think we've started with the priority review process as a pilot initially. Portia, let's just refresh my memory. I think we didn't charge a specific fee.
Yes, we're not charging fees currently.
So, because it helped us with piloting and determination of cost recovery. So we did have that period, and we will be charging priority review fees then once we gazette this regulation is gazetted.
And I think linked to that then, when do these fees come into effect?
Yeah, so What we would do after this workshop is then obviously just clean it up, make sure everything is addressed and tied up. Then we need to send it to the Department of Health, and they would run through their internal processes for gazetting. So based on the process followed for the public comments process, it took about 4 months. It was May. We submitted late May, and it was published early August. So it's about 3 months, June, July, August, yeah, that they would take before publishing. So our intention is to submit this early March, and we do estimate then around June, these fees will be published or gazetted.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that's priority. What do you want us to move to next?
I'm just
So
checking if
someone
there's
says, sorry, someone says, there's a question in the Q&A. Oh, I was looking at the chats, not Q&A.
Yes, I was
Yeah.
going to bring that to your attention, Chair. That there are 3 questions in the Q&A. Maybe if we can ask that all questions only be restricted to the chat.
Okay, right. So Bilkis says, for generic product submission, what is the additional fee for an additional bio study?
Okay, so I can respond to that. So as indicated on the screen, this would then be for the main application, which will include 2 APIs, 1 bio study, and then we'll charge a normal price additional bio study, which is, let me see, I think it's here. So I'm just looking for additional. So here's the additional fee. So an additional BE would be 26,200, and linked to with that initial additional API to the 2 would be 18,600.
Thank you, Rahad. Okay, then there's another question from Nicola. I understand that SAHPRA is a regulator and not a service provider. However, SAHPRA does provide a very important service for the public and industry, which has a significant impact on the ability of a company to supply and launch medicines, therefore facilitating access to medicine in the country, as well as driving competitive and economic stimulation. I think there's a lot of comments, and then a question is, can SAHPRA please consider committing to timelines for review and response outcome, as at the moment it's very variable and inconsistent, as well as excessively long in some cases, which inhibits the ability of an applicant to plan implementation and supply/launch, and therefore impacts access to medicines. The stop clock approach used by other RRAs works well, as it addresses the question on extension requests from the applicant. No, I mean, absolutely. So we're very much clear and aware of the need for us to improve our efficiency. And, hence you'll see at any point, we have a number of positions that we're filling because we're leveraging 2 things. First is bringing on board additional capacity, and secondly is digitizing our operations. And you'll see on our website that we provide updates in terms of our digitization journey. And so far we've procured the RIMS, and we hope that with time it will start to give us the benefits that we anticipate, one of those being the stop clock. And again, in the absence still of a stop clock mechanism, we really want to urge applicants to stick to the timeframes, because the outputs that we're showing now and the timeframes we're showing now are in the context of not having a stop clock. And we know that particularly certain periods of the year, there's just too many extensions and therefore causing delays. So I think there's certainly there's something that, you as industry members need to do in terms of sticking to the prescribed timeframes for the responses that you're submitting. But also we know that we have to work on the efficiency, and there's been certainly great improvement, and we want to continue to improve that. Someone closed the chat now. I can't see it. I can't see the Q&A. Dogozo, can you just bring back the Q&A, because I think there were 3 questions still there. Oh, here we go. All right, thank you. Are they still there? Okay, yes, thank you very much. The last 2 on the Q&A. SAHPRA is not a service provider. How can you charge fees if you do not provide? I think what we need to clarify is we're not a service provider in the general context that a service provider is regarded, and Rachad can also comment. We are a regulator. And I think we need to just understand, you know, the difference. We're a regulator, yes, and in what it is that we do is providing you with the service of reviewing the applications, but we're not a service provider in a classical definition. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, no, it was in response to the comments received on, you know, you get penalized in terms of not producing on time, not necessarily regarding the charging of fees. So it's just to indicate, as a regulator, there's a lot of legislation, there's a lot of compliance requirements, and there's an element of independence, much more than you would find with a normal service provider contractor relationship that you would find in the private sector. It's merely trying to bring that to the attention and bring that forward, to keep that in mind. Also with our fees, we can't charge what we like. This is not even a full cost recovery model. It's mainly focusing on trying to recover costs of our experts and to some extent some of the admin fees associated with that. So we can't just make up our price and say, you pay this amount and that is it. We need to jump through a lot of regulatory processes, publish for comments, have this workshop, and then only apply a sort of fee that is appropriate to industry. So it's in that context. Thank you.
Right, the last one, I think the one on veterinary applications and variations. So Furi, Karen, you say, what about veterinary applications and variations, but you're not clear what specifically are you asking about those applications? So maybe if you can just clarify that in the chat. I'm going to move away then from the Q&A and go back to the chat. Rahad, what are we tackling now in the chat in terms of questions?
Lucy Silveroni can maybe respond in the meantime. So we're currently on priority review. So I just wanted to see if when we're back on that, if we've addressed all priority reviews. So there's a comment. The next one that I can see, CEO, is I think from Lance Esmond on the timelines.
So can you kindly confirm that the priority review timelines remain unchanged?
So CEO, maybe if I could just respond to the veterinary one before we move on over to the priority. So as Richard has indicated earlier on that the fees gazette was open for comment. There hasn't been any comment from veterinary applications and their variations. So the fees as outlined in the gazette would be then applicable. Thanks.
All right, and thank you, Gerard, for the feedback. Really appreciate it. We're trying really hard to improve our turnaround times. Thank you. So from Londumiso, have the revised fees been considered in the context of fees charged by other SADC regulatory bodies, Rachad?
So our model principally relies on our own cost recovery process. So the funding of these other SADC regulators are not similar to what we as SAHPRA is facing. And I think it was in the news, there were extensive reductions in funding available to support regulators or public sector entities as well in government. So we focus on what is our cost recovery, what time does it take, and what do we do as well for our regulatory activities, which in our view is also more extensive than what is happening in the SADC countries, like the inspections, the inspections, investigations, pharmacovigilance, and so forth. So we did have a look, and when we saw there is a bit of a difference, we still have our justifiable grounds for our fees.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we've gone through those questions. Let's move to the next section. Thank you.
Sorry, my computer is a bit slow, but it would be then category A, new medicines, new applications. Specifically, the first slide deals mainly with new chemical entities. All of these fees are inflationary increases only. So we can take comments on this one, on this section of the presentation.
And the new applications.
Yes. So we're done with priority. This is our standard fees.
There was just a question. Okay, so Portia has responded to Lance. Okay, great. Thank you, Portia. Slide was now. Okay, what would the increased burden? Sorry, I need to read this question. Would that increase burden to be revenue generating? Okay, would that increase burden to be revenue generating, not potentially have an impact on the autonomy of the regulator? Yeah, I mean, this is something that we constantly manage, right? In that we do have a certain percentage of our revenue coming from national treasury, and we then charge fees. It's minuscule, and it continues to reduce on an annual basis. You all are aware of the very tight fiscus position we find ourselves in a country. However, issues of autonomy are not only linked to your revenue model or your fees that you charge, but also from a legislative position. And so we're not at the point where we are concerned about our autonomy. I think we are at the moment in a good position when it comes to autonomy. We certainly don't have enough revenue that we require for the amount of work that we need to do. Okay, so I hope that that addresses Nondomiso's question there. And then Robin, that moved. So Robin says, could you kindly clarify for medical devices and IVD licensing, if you have a license renewal, etc. in February 2023, do you need to pay the annual retention, e.g. June 2023? I think this was addressed, but you want to restate that, Rahad, you did speak to this in the presentation.
So what would happen is, and it's also in the guidelines for not just medical devices, but I think in overall retention and annual license fees, is that we use, if you are registered, if you are on the list as at 31 December of the preceding calendar year, the license fee or retention fee will be due in June for the following year. So that's the broad definition of it and how we have to apply it.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, can you just go back to clinical fees? When updating a generic PI to SMPC format and in line with the innovator, will there also be a fee payable on each response? So this is about clinical.
Yeah, I think, okay, sorry. I think
No,
the
no, go
CFO
ahead, Daslan.
I think the CFO did handle that. If you can just go to that slide. I think he did speak to that.
Yeah, see, we're jumping around a bit. If we can just again ask, let's take it then per category. So I guess this is response reviews, right, Toflan? And we have this clinical responses here. Is it this?
Yes.
Do you want to address the comment?
Yes. No, it's fine. Go back to, will there also be in terms of what we came up with, a PI to SMPC format would be a type 1 B, and there we will not. Let me just check this. We will not expect that a second response would be necessary, so that a response would have been would have been included in the initial fee. So in terms of the second response that we talk about on top, that would be for those 1Bs where a second response would probably be necessary. But for such a small generic PI to SMPC format, I take it that would even be a type 1A, not B, because not much evaluation would have gone into that. I don't think I don't know if my response satisfies the question now.
I think they can post again when we get there, Dr. in the slides.
Okay.
So we are now on new medicine still, but generic. And there was a question by Mohammed if he would just like to indicate if his comment has been addressed on the price differentiation, because I'm not seeing it.
Mohammed, if it's not addressed, I know we tackled it right in the beginning. If it's not, please do type in the chat. Happy to revisit it. Any other question on category A medicine, new generic? I'm not seeing questions, Rehan. They may come. People may still be typing. Let's go to the next section. Category A medicine responses.
So while we wait for comments, again, just to be clear, only second response, not first response. First response costs are covered in your initial application. It's also responses for would be new chemical entities, and then the second one here would be on outcome of safety and efficacy per variation. Just scroll a little bit. Okay.
All right, so it seems like you addressed then the question that Anita had, which was around would the response fee be payable in cases where new queries, not related to initial queries, are raised in the second and subsequent rounds. So I think you've covered that. And I see thumbs up there. Any other questions on the previous one and this one?
So this one continues with clinical variations. And we also have the pre-registration consultation meeting introduced as a new fee, basically introduced because we saw industry do have, I call it appetite to have such engagements, I guess, before submission.
So I didn't see, let's continue, Rafad. I don't see questions.
There's a comment from Mohammed.
Okay, let's see. Go ahead.
Thanks. Prior to a new category being added, generic application was a single fee, and therefore the increase in fees is significant. In other words, the old fee addressed generic application with or without PE. So yes, that is indeed correct. So it was indeed the 120, find it, this specific issue. So we basically went then from 84 to 120. So it sort of ties up to my general comments. When we did a review, we noticed there is some of the fees are not recovering appropriately, not fully recovering. And we noted that if there's no BE, this amount is actually quite, that is basically, we think the initial cost recovery was based on, was it aligned to this pricing? So it would be a generic with no BEs. But when we started to see, but hey, we do have applications with BEs in them. and we don't have a pricing structure for them. We are significantly under recovering for that specific application. Hence, we had to introduce this fee. But remember, you're getting more bang for your buck, if I can call it that, because now, if you include a BE, you will be charged the 120, where previously, okay, we were not catering for that. But with our financial situation, we cannot have these significant gaps in certain of our fee reviews. So we do ask the understanding from industry that we are trying to at least recover so that we can build up funding for resources to enable our service to industry to be more effective. Because as we stand, since SAHPRA has started, or since I've started, we had at one point 120 vacancies. This year we had 80 vacancies, and we just don't have the revenue generating capacity to fill these posts. We are squeezing every cent that we get into our cost of employment, which is sitting at over 65% of our total budget. You know, everything is trying to go to human resources so that we can service industry, but we're still lacking. It's not healthy to have a budget ratio of 65 to 70% going just to cost of employment. So we are really trying to make sure that we justify a fee or a new fee, because there is sound basis for that. Thank you, CEO.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other questions posed that. Let's proceed, Rahmat. And then maybe we'll take a break at the top of the hour for about 10 minutes. So there's a comment here, a question, let's see, from Sayuri. Apologies if I pronounced it incorrectly. To avoid any confusion, I assume first response does not include response to screening queries.
Chair, if I could come in. So screening queries are a different set of queries. So when we do screening, we will share screening queries, and evaluation queries are a different set of queries. But as we have been under-resourced, we didn't have screeners. So in some instances, we have combined the screening with the evaluation queries. So in cases where the screening queries are not significant, we have combined it. We've already allocated for review. But technically, screening queries, if it is significant, will be then sent separately. Thanks.
So maybe if I can just sort of just clarify, screening queries, whether sent separately or combined with a evaluated query, is part of this first response, meaning it won't be charged for separately. It is a first response if together with a technical query, otherwise separate and not charged for. But anyway, it's part of a first response.
Yeah, it will be part of the first response. So with screening responses, you're not paying for that, just to clarify.
Yeah.
So we're talking about evaluation queries, the second query round, which you would then pay additional. The first query round response is covered for in the fee. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thanks. CEO, the next category is the additional APIs BEs. It's a new fee category, mainly introduced because we have applications with 4 BE studies and so forth, and multiple APIs, and the fees that we charge is just not getting there. So we introduced this category as well. It's purely the evaluation time and rates that are charged for that. There's no other filing or administrative costs or anything associated to it that would be added upon new applications for generics and NCEs. CEO, I think I'll just move on then.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I'm muted. I was saying that there are no comments, so we can maybe proceed. raise them when they come through.
The next is category A, still post-registration. All of these fees are inflationary based increases compared to 2020, except for this item here that increased from 15,600 to 32,800. Similar reasons as per the comment on the generic one, that we saw significant under recovery in this process. And when we reviewed the Gazette, we tried to see where we can pick up these under recoveries. And I did give a bit of a cost breakdown in terms of what this process entails for us. I think what previously was missing is the Q&A and the level of review being done on these type of applications.
Okay, there's a question. It says a reliance model is used by the authority when reviewing Zazibona approved products, hence the reduced timelines. In this case, the resources used, i.e. human, time, etc., are less in comparison to those used in a full review. In this case, what is the authority's thought process in not providing applicants with the reduced fee for Zazibona approved products?
So, Chair, maybe I could take that. And as we've outlined, that the process involves a separate stream, dedicated resources that would have to address that, to accomplish the 90-day timeline. And it's not that no review is taking. Remember, SAHPRA has been participating in the Zazibona process. We also have regional requirements which need to be reviewed. So effectively, there has not been any significant change. And I think a lot of these with reliance models, the assumption is that because there's less review from the side of the reviewer, that it doesn't incur any costs to the agency. However, the process of acquiring this information as well as the administration that's involved in it is actually cost intensive in terms of administration and retrieving of information in part of these collaborative processes. So as such, there wouldn't be a cost reduction. But the benefit is the time reduction in terms of review timelines to the applicant. Thanks.
And then the next question, additional API and API source. In the comments, it is stated that it will be charged per application number. Why is this necessary if the API is only reviewed once and not per application number?
So if I can take that, Chair, this matter was raised at the time when we were discussing the fees, and we've indicated that you either consider this applications as an application per product, and where there are applicable similarities that would be then accounted for. And the applicants then agreed to rather having grouping of their applications per se. So we have then accepted the groupings as per the requirements of the applicants, and the individual applications will be then charged for individually, and that's why that principle has been applied. So it is the industry's decision at that point in time. Thanks.
Thumbs up. Thank you. Then there's another question.
That one has jumped. Sorry, CEO has jumped ahead. Can we maybe pause on it again, asking to post questions per slide?
So which one? Let's give
So
the PAT one.
Yeah, the NCL one is still coming. So I'm asking that we maybe skip over it a bit until we can deal with it per slide.
All right. So Ceci, if we miss it, please repost it when we get to that section. Okay, any other questions on this one?
So we were on post-registration. I couldn't see any comments there. Then we are on post-registration again. This one, we've removed the 6,200. Then the quality variation fees of the application number. These are the groupings I think Silver just commented on. That one we removed duplicate wording. We didn't have extensive comments on this, but let me pause here and see if there's any further comments on the variations. The fee for variations.
I don't see any comments. Let's just give it a minute. So there's a question, confirm that post-reg fees are once off and no second response. I think we've touched on that, isn't it?
Yeah, look, all fees, the first response, whether it's pre-reg, post-reg, if there's a response, initial response is catered for. Second response will be charged for. Right, Silver? I didn't miss something
Yes,
there.
and that's, yeah, for the type 2s. And we've indicated for the multiple type 1As and 1Bs, but the single 1As and 1Bs will not be charged for. But it's basically type 2s. Second response onwards will be charged for.
Yes, that is the better response, thanks. I think it was this is clinical. So you would see we've removed the second response reviews for type 1A and 1B. Only have one fee for type 2 and multiples. So that would be then, yeah, again, second response clarified.
Okay, good. All right, before we move to the next section, can we take a 15-minute break? So we'll come back
Yes.
then to slide 14, post-reg, okay? So we will be back at 12:15. So we'll take a 14-minute break. Thank you, everyone. Okay, hope we're all back. Let's see if Rachad is back. Rachad?
I'm back.
Okay, great. And I understand that the other teams are in the same meeting room. So Silverani, can you comment? Can you confirm that you guys are back? They're probably just battling to unmute. Silverani, are you guys back?
They were there the last time I checked.
No, people have stepped out to make coffee. All right, so let's see. Portia, are you back? Okay, let's maybe give them 2 minutes or so. Portia, Silverani, Ponze.
Yes, CEO, we are back.
Okay,
We can
thank you.
proceed. Thank you.
Okay. Now, where are we? So there was a question here from Robin. Can you kindly send us the SAHPRA email contact details for finance queries? Rachad?
It's also on the website. It's finance at SAHPRA. I think it's also on the payment guideline as well. And I'll just type it in once I get a chance. I'll respond to that specific comment.
Thank you. And then, okay, then next question from Prakash is, this may sound a bit of a weird question. For pre-registration and post-reg, when we're liable to pay for the second response, when the unit provides us with the query, can they also provide a pro forma or tax invoice for the amount that is due?
Yeah, we've although it's manual and it does take a bit of time, but we can incorporate that on request. It will also help with referencing and so forth. So yes, between the units and finance, we can make such an arrangement.
Okay, good. The next question. In the case where the applicant has fully satisfied the first query and receives another query which is not related to the first query, is the applicant responsible for paying the second query even though the query could have been included in the first round?
Chair, if I can respond. In the case of where queries are raised in the first round, that it would be all the queries that would possibly come from the data that the applicant has sent. So if they have fully met all the requirements, there wouldn't be another question being raised unless the response in the first query round, say for instance, they didn't include the restricted part of the or submit the restricted part of the APIMF, which would require that we review that APIMF and questions may emerge from that document, which was not initially supplied or there was no conformance with the requirements of the guideline. In such a case, they would still have to pay, but technically they shouldn't be. If you have met all the requirements and your response in your first query round conforms with all the requirements, then there shouldn't be a question that's unrelated to be raised. And this can, if you do have something like that coming up, as indicated, you need to communicate that this is a new question and it's not related to the actual response round or having addressed the outstanding queries as per the first round.
If there's a follow-up question. Yes, Dr.
If I can just add to that, Chair. I think this applies to clinical as well, but with clinical, it's a bit tricky because you'll find that it is a perception of the applicant that this could have been included in the first query, only to find that there were other considerations from the first response that caused us to probe further. So I think with PM it's quite clear cut but with clinical, there are some clashes of perception between us and the applicant. And I think the overriding principle here should be good faith. And I do not think that we would ask a second query just for the fun of it. There has to be a reason. And if we include a step where the applicant has to prove, or we have to prove, that either the query could have been asked the first time around, or we have to prove that the query could not have been asked the second time around, it becomes a bit of a messy situation. So I think there's that element of good faith in terms of our intentions on both sides. Thanks, Jim. But I agree with Silva that there's always a good reason why a second query would arise. Thanks.
All right, and the details for finance have been put there. I don't see any other comments for now. Let's proceed, Rehad.
Okay, the next slide is on retention and renewal. Retention fees, mainly inflation related, and we've reduced the prices on master and line extensions and clarified a cap at 2 line extensions. So we can take any additional comments.
Let's see. Give it a minute or so for people to type if they've got questions. Okay, let's proceed. I don't see questions, Rehad. Please do send them. We'll address them as they come through. Rehad, over to you.
Yes, the next one is the authorized prescribers, and then mainly the lot release fees. And there was a previous question that we parked for a bit. It talked about PIT, if I can recall. So maybe if we can just scroll to that one. It was posted at 11:56. And so this is probably in your area.
Thanks, Richard. So just for the applicants to know that when a product is registered, there is a responsibility of the holder of certificate of registration to ensure that the product meets acceptable standards of quality and safety and efficacy by inference. So it is expected that the release test to market is performed by the applicant. In cases where it is imported, they may it would be requested that they do post-importation testing, and based on the post-importation testing requirements, they may then apply for exemption. In the case of the lot release, these pertain to vaccines. It involves, as per the Act, that an independent test be performed, which is done by SAHPRA as the independent versus the release from an applicant. So this testing is an independent test. It involves verifying the genealogy and etc. through the lot summary protocol, as well as some of the testing. So they don't perform the full testing as is required for release, and hence we cannot be quoting it as a surrogate for post-importation testing. So the applicant's responsibility still remains to perform post-importation testing, and the lot release function is basically a service that is provided to ensure that all vaccinations that do take place and within South Africa has met the accepted standards and is verified to have complied with the requirements. So it's not the same test. So I think applicants are trying to say that, you know, the lot release is a post-importation testing. It is not. And that, I think, is what the difference is between post-importation testing versus lot release testing. Thanks. Also to just add that lot release is also performed on batches that are manufactured even in South Africa. So it's not, as in the case of post-importation, it has to be imported and then you do the testing. So please, there is a distinct difference between the responsibility of the applicant and the role of lot release as per the Act. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Silverani. If there's any follow-up questions on that, please do put them in the chat. Rehad, I don't see any other questions.
Okay. Next one is registrations. So there is mainly the screening fee that might have been interpreted as a more than inflationary increase, but basically it is just that. So yeah, we can take questions on this one, on this slide.
Okay, no comments yet. We can proceed.
Next one was on clinical trials, section 21. There was a comment where that includes ARUO's clinical evaluation. So the response there was this is only for section 21.
No comments for now.
Okay, the next slide relates to the license fees, including medical devices and CAMs. So these fees applied historically as well. The only difference is we actually did a separate allocation for medical devices, same amounts, but also just clarifying that the top one is including CAMs. So it's just to create a specific category mainly for medical devices.
Can we just see the titles of the slides? It's just so we can fully track where we are. Okay, thank you. Any comments on this? Okay, so I don't see comments. Do we still have industry on the call? I hope so. Even if you type to just say, yes, I'm here. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's proceed, Rehad.
Continuation of fees for licenses, also just inflationary, and also just creating a category for medical devices and clarifying on CAMs. So these are renewals.
Okay, no comments yet. Let's proceed.
Okay, fees for licenses, the annual license fees, license for manufacture, and amendments, also just inflationary increases.
Your slides are not moving now, Rehad, unless it's just me. We're still on the fees for licenses for medical devices and CAMs.
Yeah, so it should be number 23. So
Okay,
this one
no, then we're good.
was, 22 was for application of renewal. This one is retention and amendments. So we should be on 23.
Yes, okay, we're on the same page, 23. So there's a question from Denise. Will there be any changes to these once the regulations are published? For the licenses, I don't think so, but Rehad Dimakatso, please comment.
I don't think there would be changes for these categories as we've been running with it for quite a few years. I think the changes, if you can recall what we've published for comments, I think there would be quite substantial changes in alignment in terms of our our work streams. We did test it as well, and the license fees that we checked in terms of our cost recovery did align actually quite well to the licenses, so we were comfortable to continue with just inflationary increases there. But Democrats, you can add if you think I'm too optimistic maybe on that.
You're correct. Good morning, everyone. You're correct, Steve Hands, my shop. I agree with you. Thank you.
Sorry, I missed it.
Another question. Okay, yeah, we'll avail the slides. I think they've got adequate detail to give you some comfort from what we've just done. Okay, let's proceed. Inspectorate.
Yes. Next slide is inspectorate, only inflationary increases on the rate per hour for inspections. There's also quite extensive guidelines there in terms of how much we can charge in the hours. The other one was just a clarification that it's per day. This is not a rate per hour.
Okay. I don't see comments. All right.
Okay, the next slide is on permits and certificates, mainly inflationary adjustments, maybe rounded up and down a little bit as well. And we removed the initially introduced fee of review of port health and border detainment products.
Okay, no comments right now, Rafa.
Okay, then it is the final slide on amendments, transfer, and appeal. They were mainly just inflationary increases on these as well.
Let's see the comments.
Okay, so there's a new comment. Dion, is that your area?
Yeah, I was gonna reply in the chat, but I thought I'd rather just reply. No, so if you're bringing in a new product of a sample of a product that is not registered, no, you don't have to pay for the letter of authorization. However, if it is a control product in terms of Section 22A9 and Section 22A11, you may need to have a permit.
Okay, that's addressed. Any other questions, comments, even if it's now just general ones, because we've gone through the full presentation? Let's give it 2 minutes or so for general questions, comments. Thanks, Judy. It's an absolute pleasure, and I hope the session was helpful. Hey, I don't see any other comments. Thank you, Mel. All right, Rehan, you seem to have done a good job. We finished way before time.
I think
So
there's,
Khalid,
yeah, I think there is one
Go
more comment. It's jumping around a bit. From Anita Small, posted 1234. It's about Section 36 applications.
sorry, Anita, I missed that. The fee for Section 36. Who's going to tackle that? Dion or you?
Dion
Rehan?
Chair. Dion Chair.
Yes, I'm sorry, what was the question? I think I also missed it on the chat.
So the question is, could we please clarify if a
Mhm.
fee is applicable for Section 36 applications?
Yes, it is. We've actually clarifying it now in the things, but it's actually sitting under the once-off deviations per product. That's the fee that we've been charging for because you're asking for a deviation for your product. So, but we are clarifying that in the proposed gazette so that people are clear that we charge for Section 36 exemptions.
Good. I hope that addresses Anita's question. Let's see, there's other messages. So-
Timakatsu's hand is up, CEO.
Yes, Timakatsu?
Yeah, I think there was another question. I'm not too sure if I missed it, but I never left the room. It's the 1128 question. I think this will be for the CFO or is there more? From Whitney Roderick.
What time?
1128. 1128.
You want to read it out for us, please?
Yeah, good day. Kindly advise why do we pay a fee for the renewal of the license and further pay 3,400 for collection?
So collection fee, Timakatsu, is actually when it's approved, right? And we actually issue a certificate or a form of document for that. That is applicable for the next, what, 5 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're correct.
So the main reason, the cost recovery elements behind that is also just maintenance of the databases. It sustains also to some extent the pharmacovigilance activities and the other inspectorate activities, and obviously the software related to having such systems and issuing such certified documents, basically.
Thanks, CFO. Over to you, Chair. I think that was the only question I picked up that it was not addressed. Thank you.
We can maybe hear from Portia if we missed anything that might have been posted pre our attempt to coordinate it per slide.
CFO and CEO, I've just checked. Yeah, I think we've addressed all the questions that were posted on the chat. And yeah, we've dealt with all of them. Thank you.
Thanks, Portia. And if there's any member from industry who's of the view that there's a question they posted that we didn't identify, we may not agree with the responses that we've given, but one that we have not identified, please do repost it so that we tackle everything. But it seems that we have. Okay, so a comment from Paul, Section 36 is usually a permanent exemption. A once-off deviation is batch specific for a certain period of time. The fee definition would need to change to include Section 36 specifically. Dion?
So we're going to clarify that, Dr. Tumi, but it's still going to be the same fee that we have for what we're currently charging for Section 36s. And remember that some people also apply for a particular batch where they're deviating from the regulations, and that's a Section 36 exemption.
Thank you. I hope you're satisfied. And Paul, where can we find a copy of the revised fees will then be gazetted for implementation, right, Rahad?
Yes. So the next step would be to, after this presentation, obviously, is just to then finalize the Word version or the version that would be submitted to DOH for gazetting. So we intend to do that in the next 2 weeks. So the next time you'll see it would probably be when it's gazetted.
Okay. Says there are no section 36s to date. And then it says heck, I don't understand that info. Okay, here we go. No section 36s have had fees requested to date. Is this only going forward?
No, we have been charging fees for Section 36s. As long as I've been at SAHPRA, we have charged fees.
Okay. Yes, someone else from industry is also confirming. Okay, great. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, thank you. So just to thank the SAHPRA team for preparing for very good and extensive feedback to industry. I do appreciate the amount of time that went into this. Portia and Rahad and your respective teams, thank you for that. And also just to thank all 420 odd members of industry for joining. I think this demonstrates how important this is. And we really hope that this will be, I think, the nature of engagements that we have on some of these sticky issues. So there'll be more of these sessions coming when we then provide feedback on some of either the guidelines or policy positions that we have taken. So thank you so much for your time. It's greatly appreciated. All right, thank you. Do have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks,
Bye.
bye.